Hello, welcome back to another episode of Day 54. I'm Amit and I'm feeling pretty cool right now. That's why I got the sunglasses on. I am reviewing the movie Robert Downey Xavier, or Javi, I think as they call it, RDX. I finally had the chance to watch this movie, guys. Finally, it came to Melbourne. And I'm so happy that it came to Melbourne because they had one cinema that was playing this all the way on the other side of town for me, which was about 2.5 hours away. And that was just going to be very difficult for someone that works full time to go watch a movie that's so far away. But it came closer to home. It came closer to me. So I watched it yesterday night, and oh my god, man, amazing! It lived up to all the hype and all the good word of mouth. It worked. I did come in a little bit apprehensive, to be completely honest, because after hearing so much good word of mouth about this movie and how much people like this movie, it was just like my expectation is too high for this movie. Actually, like, is this going to be one of those movies where I am just, I come in and I think it's going to be the best movie ever, and it's going to fall a little bit flat? No, this met expectations. This was awesome, man. I absolutely love this movie. This movie was so much fun, and that's the best way to describe it. Obviously you watch this movie because when you watch the movie, it's going to be about the action. You see the martial arts, you see the stunt work, you see the video editing, you see the stunt coordination, and this movie is going to be a lot of fun just from that. But when I came into this movie and how well it started, man, whew, what a movie, man. What a start. It establishes so much so well at the very start with the first initial fight. The first 20 or 30 minutes of this movie are incredible. They set up the first scene so well with just Antony Varghese's character Donnie basically just taking out a few guys, and from then we basically see the rest unfold. Story wise, look, there's a decent story here. I'll get into that a little bit, but first I have to talk about sort of my theater experience. Yeah, man, wow. So I saw this in the cinema, and I'm so happy I was able to see this in cinema because I think it does really add another element to the viewing experience if you just see it on the large screen, because there's so much happening. It's pretty cool. Now, the cinema that I was at honestly was pretty full. So, I talked about King of Kota recently and how it was basically it was empty. There's barely anyone there. But this time when I went to the cinema, now mind you, it's a smaller cinema that they put Malayalam movies into, and in general, all Indian movies except for maybe the big Bollywood ones, and maybe the Tamil movies might get some bigger theaters. But the Malayalam movies they put into a small theater, but it's kind of good because it feels more intimate and small. It's full. It was full. There were people sitting in the front row. So that's how well this movie is still doing, even though it's been out for I don't know how long now, a month. And it's just come to Australia. The word of mouth is so good. People were dying to see it here. So there you go, man. And it was pretty cool because it was atmospheric. People were getting pretty excited. Not everyone. It wasn't going crazy, but there were a lot of sort of people cheering at certain different scenes. And obviously the Babu Anthony climax scene was a big one that people really liked. So yeah, it was a cool experience seeing this in cinema. Only drawback is, and I don't know if it's the same thing in Kerala, guys, or wherever you watched it, but people bring babies to the movies here, which I don't understand. I'm not even talking about kids. I'm talking about babies that drink out of baby bottles, because I could see in the distance someone was basically feeding the baby formula or milk, basically. I don't know why. There's babies crying for half the movie, which kind of took it out a little bit, but luckily the sound was so loud it kind of drained it out. That's the only thing that I can think of which is a little bit off-putting in terms of the movie. But look, the theater experience was awesome. The fight scenes, everything looked so much better on sort of the big screen, as it always does. So yeah, that's one thing. But about the movie itself, let me get onto the movie. Awesome movie, as I said. But I have to start with sort of some of the stunt work and the fight choreography in this. I went here to watch this movie because of the action. I love action. I love action movies. So when I saw the trailer for this, I was very excited because I saw these three characters and a lot of martial arts. And obviously Babu Anthony, who I've seen a little bit of just through honestly YouTube clips because I heard his name and he's a martial artist. But it was pretty freaking awesome because I don't know, man, I loved how each of the fighters had their own distinct way of fighting. Like obviously, I think it's hard to get past Xavier's character Chavi, played by Neeraj Madhav, who was just awesome. Like all these actors bought it. They really came to play in this one. But him with the nunchucks, honestly, anytime he comes out, I think he only fought with nunchucks, uh, which was just freaking awesome because every fight scene was just like whoa, so great and so grand. But yeah, he was awesome, and like so he had the weapons angle, and obviously you had Antony Varghese's character who was more the brawler kind, always using his fists and elbows. I think they say karate, but I think they mix up a little bit of martial arts here and there because like Antony Varghese' fighting style looked a little bit almost like more of a brawler kind. So he's mixing in elements of probably like Muay Thai where he's using his elbows and his fists and his, I don't know if he uses his knees, but his style was very different to again Shane Nigam's Robert, who's basically more of like the athletic type. I feel like he was flying around a lot, mostly using a lot of kicks to sort of get people, that's sort of his attack strategy. So everyone looked different in how they were fighting. And I love that about it because it creates there's so much that's dynamic about this sort of fight there. Nothing is sort of boring in that way. Like I think the editing is done pretty well. I did think sometimes there were too many quick cuts. That's always a challenge in sort of recording fight scenes is, if there's too many quick cuts, you kind of get out of the feel of the actual fight. So I think they could have done that a little bit better. And also there's a lot of open spaces, which created some cool visual scenery. But I think they could have done a little bit better. But look, I'm nitpicking because I actually just enjoyed it. I'm coming at you from somebody that's watched, action movies growing up. Like I watched Kung Fu, Jackie Chan movies. I watched, The Raid is one of my favorite movies ever. And obviously from Hollywood, all the stuff from Van Damme and, Nicolas Cage and some of his action stuff and, Sylvester Stallone and Arnold Schwarzenegger. I've grew up watching martial arts and action, The Matrix, there's so many movies that I watched with martial arts. So I'm so happy to see this side, basically martial arts in Indian film and especially in Malayalam film, because they can do it justice, So yeah, the fight choreography was really fun. Story-wise, I did enjoy it, and I was surprised at how seriously they took themselves in this movie. Because if I'm being honest, when I saw the trailer and I saw sort of the marketing material and everything like that, and I saw the premise of this movie being kind of not like too, it sounded like it wasn't too serious, like there wasn't going to be a lot happening. So I thought maybe it'd be more, a fun movie where they're actually just, going to use martial arts and have some cool set pieces. To be honest, it was actually took itself really seriously. Like it was a really serious movie, despite, it's not a huge scale kind of movie, but what they did so beautifully, and I want to talk about the climax scene because that was probably one of my favorites. They build up the stakes so well that you actually invest into the story and you root for these characters and you want to see what happens to them on their journey. I thought it was so well done. You were intrigued the whole time around. I don't know how long the movie was, but honestly, how long it was, it didn't feel like a long movie. Like the interval seemed to come around in no time. And there is sort of a backstory that they sort of go take us on, but even in the backstory, they show us sort of, their history and there's some cool fight scenes even there. Like there's one early on where I think they're playing cricket and, the swagger and the way that they introduce these characters is pretty awesome, especially when they show them together. I absolutely loved it. Whenever they showed them together, I'd be like, whoa, like, it's always great when there's a team of fighters, and that's what I loved about it. And of course, she's with Babu Anthony there as well, just the X factor coming in at the end. But yeah, look, I did enjoy the sort of first half and how it took us back on sort of a journey to see, what's actually happening. We start off kind of in the middle of the movie, then we sort of progress a little bit, then go all the way back to see what happened with the family and the big breakout brawl scene at the carnival. It's also really cool that whenever you have like these fights in sort of a carnival setting, there's just a lot of chaos happening. So I love that chaotic feeling that's sort of there. But yeah, look, the backstory, the romance was nice. I think it could have been fleshed out a little bit better. And the character of Minnie, I think she was really just there for the first half and then kind of swept aside. But it was entertaining. I enjoyed the romance scenes. I enjoyed sort of seeing the chemistry between all the characters come together. And the chemistry that Shane Nigam and the main actress here, Mahima, was really good. Like there were a lot of really fun scenes. I feel, and I really was enjoying myself. There's not too much humor in this movie. I would say it's not a. There's no. I wouldn't really call it a comedy in any sense. There's a few lines here and there which are funny, but I wouldn't really call it a funny movie. But it definitely has a lot of lighthearted moments which make you really, enjoy yourself in the movie. Aside from just sort of the stunt coordination and the action, there's other sides of the movie that are also really enjoyable, including the chemistry between these three actors. Phenomenal, man. Like, whew, Antony Varghese, Shane Nigam, and Neeraj Madhav, like, wow, they just work so well together. Obviously, I think Shane Nigam's probably the spotlight in this movie. It's probably his movie more than anyone else's. I think in this, because he has sort of the most story in his character. Like, they show us, his journey where what he goes through, essentially his redemption to come back to the family after, leaving or being cast away in a way. I think like Neeraj Madhav's character, Madhav, probably had the least amount of character. But I did really like how they showed, his family is basically their family. Because there's two brothers and he's sort of just a friend there. But he's really accepted as sort of a family member as well because he's there with them through the most difficult times. So the chemistry was fantastic. The performances were so good. And of course, these guys are doing some awesome stunt choreography, some great martial arts. Like Neeraj Madhav must have learned how to use nunchucks pretty well because they were flawless, man. Like there was never a step off. I don't think they used any stunt performers in this at all. It was just the three of them doing all their stunts. So it was pretty fantastic. Shane Nigam has some really like some solo scenes where he's fighting alone. The one on the boat where he's fighting the guy from one of my favorite guys from Naruto, the bad guy. He's fighting him in sort of a solo scene, which is a cool, like, kind of tight space scene, which I always enjoy, by the dock. And obviously, whenever the intro characters, he's trying to run away, and then, Antony Varghese' character, Donnie, comes in, and then it's like, stop, So they do that really well. The drama was built up so well, and the audience that I was watching with really appreciated it because everyone was just cheering half the time. So yeah, just top-notch performances from all three of these guys. I thoroughly enjoyed them all. Like it was awesome. On top of that, you have Lal as well, who was there, who's just solid. I think he was doing what he does best at this point, with his deep groveling voice and providing that real gravitas every time he's on screen. So I don't know, man. There's like so much to like about this movie. But I do want to talk a little bit about specifically some of the fight scenes and how well they were done, because I think that's the highlight. Once we sort of come back, I think that's where the fight scenes get even better. So I enjoyed the second half of this movie probably much more than the first half of this movie, to be honest. Like in the first half, we get some cool, the cricket fight scene is pretty cool, and the intro is very cool. But in the second half, it really ramps up. Like we get some awesome fight scenes in the second half, man. The scene when there's two scenes I want to talk about specifically before I wrap up. We have the scene where they enter the lion's den, as Zavi calls it, and I completely agree. That's what I thought of, like when they actually went. Like, why would you enter the lion's den? The great thing about this movie, and I think why it works, is because there's a certain level of tension in every fight scene. Like, despite how overpowered, Donnie and Robert are going into that lion's den, we see them basically almost die. Like we see them, they like I think at one point Donnie is hanging, like he avoids death, in the in sort of the nick of time. So it's not like they're overpowered and they can't lose. We're actually showing that there's a very good chance of them losing, and they would have lost if they didn't run away and evacuate at that point after Chavi comes and saves them from that. So there's so much tension in all the fight scenes because that there's a good chance that something is not going to work out for them. Like, they're brash, they're irrational, they're triggered by rage. And, there's no two ways about it. It's a serious situation that they found themselves in, and they have to save face for themselves and their family, and they're out for revenge and protection, really, because they can't let this happen anymore. Like, they've been bullied and harassed, and if they keep going down this path, then things are not going to change for them. So I really did appreciate that. But the fight scene itself, man, like, I love it because it's this kind of fight scene that's like just across the landscape. You're in kind of like the slums or something like that. You're in some kind of area where they have a lot of room to move. We can see them jumping around up and down, and they're kind of they're kind of there together at times, but they're also solo at times. So they're fighting their own battles, which I thought was just, it adds again a level of dynamicness, which is just fantastic in this movie. That scene is cool. Like, there's so many, like, I'm trying to remember how many scenes I actually enjoyed just within that scene itself. But I think the highlight is when Chavi comes and just goes with the nunchucks again. Every time he was with the nunchucks, I enjoyed it. I did not get sick of it at all. It was just like, yep, here he comes again, nunchucks once again, and he takes him down. It was also really cool because I think that when in second half, it feels like they have more of like a, they're triggered by rage and triggered by revenge, and you can see that in their faces. Their demeanor is different to what it was in the first half. Like they are much more jovial, and there's obviously the love story that they're trying to get through, and that's sort of what leads to all of this down the path. But in the second half, they are fully serious, and you see that like in all their faces, their facial expressions when they're fighting. They're not joking around in the situation at all, and that's expressed so well through their acting. So top-notch performances from all of them. Antony Varghese, seriously, like just was really fantastic in how contained he was as the older brother. I think that's how they portrayed him. But again, yeah, the fight scene was so awesome. Chavi's probably savior scene at the end was probably my favorite, but I want to touch on sort of the climax now because my God, I could talk about this climax scene at great length because my God, what a way to finish this movie. I would say this movie was just perfectly executed at the end. And the reason I say that is because at the end, despite what has happened, this group of thugs, essentially, they are at the point where they have resorted to having to attack the innocent family to get to these people, like because they cannot beat them. They're not beyond punching below the belt or doing something dirty or doing something unreasonable, as they showed us from the very start when they pulled the chain off the baby's neck. Like my God, like what a disturbing scene that was, and they throw the woman, Donnie's wife, through the glass, and they're attacking the wife, and they're just beating everybody down. Oof, so they let us know at the start. These people are not afraid to play dirty, and that's what happens in this hospital scene. But my God, how well is that done? The sense of tension you feel throughout the entire climax of this movie is so good because you're just on the edge of your seat the whole time, just waiting, like, what's going to happen here. And it's all shot in like the darkness to start with. When in the hospital, they have a great sense of like thrill. And you just see shadows moving past, but you get a sense that Shane Nigam is sort of working out in his head as to what's going on. So he's moving the family around. They're telling them that, you shouldn't be moving from here. She's in ICU. You shouldn't be doing that. And then basically once they're out of the hospital, after just escaping that, essentially after, being basically followed around the whole time and attempts on multiple lives, like they were ready to kill. I think there's a scene where they were ready to kill Donnie's wife. Just like that. Like just he had the blade out and he's ready to kill her, and then he saves her. So these people are ruthless. Like they made these villains just absolutely like just disturbingly, like almost like unreasonably bad. But yeah, it worked in this movie. So you really dislike the villains in this. But then yeah, exactly. We see that awesome, basically the way to escape. And even when they're trying to escape, and they're driving, in the car, in the ambulance vehicle, and they trap them and they can't get out. And you just see, Lars' performance in that was probably his highlight when he's just telling them like, we can't do this anymore. Like you guys have to just go beat them up. Like we have no way out. This is it. Do or die. It's literally do or die. Like if they don't succeed here, they'll probably die. And Lars says that. Like, we might not make it through tonight because this could be the end. Crazy. Like that's how bad the situation has gotten. And it's all believable. You're invested so much in this. And that's why this movie works so well, because the stakes are so high and you are emotionally invested to see the outcome of this fight, and you want these guys to win, because if they don't, then it is going to be something unimaginable that happens to this family. But yeah, I mean, the way this last one is shot, my God. Once again, I mean, the amount of stunt work in this was just fantastic, man. Like the scenes of Shane Nigam just basically, flying around, kicking people. And then you have on the other side, Tony's character, Antony Varghese, basically just keeps brawling with people, keeps throwing sort of throwing people one on top of each other. It's a fantastic fight scene, and obviously you have Chavi who comes in, who's actually handicapped a little bit because he's been hit in the head, and he's actually just come out of hospital. There's not much that he can do, yet at the same time, he comes out and he just just uses all the power he stored up. So it's reasonable, right? Like I wouldn't that's a cool thing. Like it's reasonable that he had to sort of stay back and only come as a last resort, because he's already injured, right? But when he comes out, he has a moment of brilliance and he just comes flying out of the truck window and attacks them. Awesome, man. Like these three are just on fire, and there's a cool scene when all three of them are together and they just show the camera coming back and they show them all standing there, ready to take on the world. The expressions on the face are so intense. These guys knocked it out of the park, man. And then just to, if it wasn't good enough, man, like just to sort of put the cherry on top, Babu Antony grabs the nunchucks. The whole cinema just started erupting when that happened, man. It was pretty awesome because they just go down to his face and they show him, and it's like the sleeping giant has arrived. Like, he mentioned how he doesn't use karate or martial arts unless it's self-defense, and he gets to the point where he has to do something. Just him going with the nunchucks, like this guy is so good, and it was just the perfect way to just cap it off. Like, like now you guys are done. It's over now because we have this guy who's going to come out and the master who's going to destroy you all. So, I mean, it's a perfect scene right there with him. I enjoyed this movie so much. Like, I mean, I'm remembering this movie quite a bit since yesterday, and I cannot wait for it to come out to streaming because I'm going to find a way to do some reactions to some of my favorite scenes, grab my co-hosts, grab some of my guests, and just go to town with this one, man, because it's a lot of fun. Look, I hate to be a downer, but there are some criticisms. The ones I mentioned before are not criticisms. They're sort of nitpicks about sort of some of the action. I thought the action was like 9 out of 10 or like 8, maybe 8 out of 10, to be honest, to be realistic. And that's really good. Like that's fantastic. I really enjoyed it quite a bit. Now, the only criticisms I have is, look, I think the villains in this movie, I loved how they showed them as being such badasses. But like they use a lot of exposition at times to tell us how bad they are and what the motivations are behind some of these villains, I guess, actions. There's a moment when they bring back the character Minnie, and she's basically like, you don't want to mess with this guy. Like, he's worse than his brother. But that's told to us. We don't really see much that he does that's really badass, except for him killing like an innocent guy, innocent politician, on the terrace or something like that. Not that intimidating, So I wish they had shown the villains to be a little bit more badasses. Like I think that's probably the next step they have to work on to sort of get villains to become a bit more, really, really, badasses. So you're terrified of them. You were terrified of these guys as a group. That's the thing. Like there was singular focus. There was really nobody that I think that really brought that villain aspect really well. And that's reflected in the cast. There's no real, like there's a few villain characters, I think, and they all did fantastically for what they were given. I never blame any of the actors for, anything that they sort of did. I think they all performed to the best of their abilities, including the cop, who had a pretty cool role as well, played by Baiju, who I've seen a little bit before in a few things. But yeah, I think the villains could have been fleshed out a little bit better. And also, I think, look, as much as I love Babu Antony, I think his role could have been a bit bigger. Like, we really waited for him to sort of show something. And he does show us, a little bit at the end. But it would have been cool if they teased him a little bit better at the start. And they could have done that in a number of ways. Like at the karate center, maybe somebody comes and tries to, rough them up or something like that. And he shows, some of his prowess and he just stops him straight away. So you're like, whoa. But this guy's a force to be messed with. Like, he's going to come out and do something later on. And I can't wait for that to happen. So they could have done something like that. But overall, man, they're not really major criticisms. Like, I thoroughly enjoyed this movie quite a bit. It's definitely my kind of movie. And it's just an entertaining watch, to be honest. But look, that was my review. That's my opinion. The IMDb rating for this movie is a 7.9. It's almost an 8 out of 10. I'm probably going to give this like an 8.5, to be honest. I really enjoyed this movie. it was really, really fun movie. And I understand maybe people did not think it has a deeper story or the most complex themes and things like that. I don't care. This movie was about action and entertainment, swagger, and they did it perfectly, I think, in that way. Almost perfectly in that way. So, guys, I know this movie is still hot right now, so I'd love to know your thoughts about this movie. Let me know what you thought about my thoughts and whether you agree with me. Did you enjoy this movie? Did you not enjoy it so much? Let me know in the comment section below. Love to chat to you like always. And thanks again, Melbourne, for having this movie. And I will chat to you guys on the next one.